All right, good afternoon, everyone. So let's get started with this winter bike commuting workshop. Um, this meeting is being recorded. My name is Jessica Poulin. My pronouns are they, them. And, I'm looking outside my window at all of this snow. So I'm really excited to have our two panelists today talking about some, winter riding skills and how to ride safely and have fun while still doing so. I'm a program coordinator at Local Motion. Local Motion is a nonprofit advocacy organization here in Vermont that works to make it safe, accessible, and fun to everyone for everyone to walk, roll, and ride in the state. We have two excellent in-season riders here with us today. We're going to talk about how to, make your winter ride safer, how to become a more confident winter rider, and how to continue having fun riding through all of that snow and ice and slush and everything else that winter likes to throw at us. If you have questions during the presentation, pop those down in the chat. And about halfway through the presentation, I will take a look at those questions and answer them. And then again, at the end of the presentation, if more questions come through. So I will introduce our presenters now. So one of our presenters is Eliana Fox, who is the Sustainable Transportation Coordinator at Champlain College. And our other presenter is Peggy O'Neill-Vivanco, who's the Director of the Vermont Clean Cities Coalition. I will now turn it over to Peggy.
Hi, folks. Thank you, Jessica and Eliana, for joining me on this. So we did this last year. We had really great response, and so we're doing it again. This is really an opportunity for us to share some information about winter biking and get some folks who are new to winter biking or thinking about it to get your butt in the saddle and see what it's like. So we're going to throw out this poll right now. Have you ever ridden in winter? Yes, regularly. Sometimes I have, but it's in a while, or no, never. So please, you should be seeing that on your screen and just fill those out.
All right, so it looks like we have answers coming in. Everybody has answered. So half of everybody here has never ridden in the winter before. And the remaining half is evenly split between some people have, but it's been a while, and then yes, sometimes. So what's interesting to note is we have no regular winter riders here today. So excellent. Okay.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And then even just like defining what is a regular winter rider. We're going to go through challenges, goal setting, how to prep so that you can have a successful ride and that you're warm, safe winter bicycling, techniques for riding in the snow and ice. As we know, just from walking or driving in the snow and ice, it's different than when it's not. So what are the strategies that you need to feel comfortable and confident in those types of conditions? The winter riding mindset, it is a mindset. And that's I think, for me, I think that's like the easiest part. Once you do it a couple times, it's exciting. And then the clothing and gear. In some cases, the clothing and gear can be the bigger obstacles, like, I don't have this, I don't have that. What should I have? We'll go over some recommended pieces and options, and a lot of it's really personal. Like some people are super committed to bar mitts and others not. It's like cilantro, who loves it, who doesn't, that kind of a thing. And then winter bike maintenance. As we know from our vehicles and our snow boots, the salt really wreaks havoc. So we'll go over some maintenance pointers and then some Q&A. So as we all know, the challenges of winter biking, it can be cold, right? Although I have to say, December and most of January, it hasn't been that cold, relatively speaking. But now the temperatures are starting to drop. We're getting snow, yay. So what else do we need to think about? The ice, the snow, the sludge, how that impacts our infrastructure. I keep looking out the window. Sorry if I'm turning my head, it's because I keep looking out the window. So what's plowed, what's unplowed, riding on the bike path versus riding on the road, bike lanes, what's plowed, what's not. So all those factors are, calculations we make as we, think about winter biking. So you have a little tiny bit of work to do right now. Goal setting. This is when we even say a regular winter bike rider, we want folks to try this out and think that they can do it, not that they have to do it every single day, not that they have to do it in like terrible weather to wear some badge of honor. No, this is about making some small changes. It's amazing to ride in the winter, but you have to feel comfortable. So right now, just jot down or think about 5 places that you drive to every week, whether it's work, think about something within, like a 5-mile radius, or maybe even a 3-mile radius, or even shorter. Just think about the 5 places that you go to on a regular basis during the week. And then choose 2 places that you think are feasible to replace with a bike trip. The goal is to try 1 each week to see how it goes. Again, this is thinking baby steps. So just let's say if you live in, we're in Burlington right now. So say if you live in the New North End and you live down the avenue and you go to the Hannaford, you just to pick up some milk. You're not doing your, family of 5 grocery shopping, but you're just going to pick up some milk. Try that once on bike. What does it mean? What does it look like? And just see how it goes, with a discrete distance, a place where you go regularly. Again, that's a way to kind of get into that mindset. So those 2 places, whether it's, down the avenue to the Hannaford or wherever it is, what are the things that you need to make that ride feasible? Is it gear? Is it mapping? Do you need to do a test ride? Do you need to go with a partner or a friend? What are those things that are going to help you get in the saddle and go do that? Sometimes it's when I first started riding, my husband has been a winter rider forever. And I think, being pregnant and pushing kids in strollers and then backpacks and strollers and so forth, it took me a lot longer to do winter biking. And at first I was nervous. And, I just did a really, really short ride and realized, oh, it's okay. It's different, but it's okay. So I think it's okay to acknowledge, some of this, like, oh, this is something, bike riding is something I know, but the winter riding is something I don't know. So how do we demystify that? And then am I to you, Eliana, now? So now Eliana is going to take us to the next stage of preparing for this winter bike commute.
Thanks, Peggy. And feel free to jump back in at any time. Definitely, we're co-instructors or co-panelists. So definitely jump in. So think about, you've set your goals, you have your destination in mind. Okay, what does it mean to get ready to actually go out and do that ride? Something that helps a lot is planning your route. Oftentimes your bike route might be different than your driving route, and so it helps to kind of determine what that is, figure out your streets. And Google Maps has that bicycling layer, so you can see what those streets are and kind of select the most appropriate route. And if you're new to winter bike commuting, it might help to try out that bike route ahead of time when it's nicer out and with less constraints on your time, so you can like follow those bike route directions and learn the route. And that way, when you're going out and you're doing it for real and if it's on a snowy day, perhaps, it helps to know like what the specific turns are. Maybe you have identified where that pothole is in that bike lane on your commute, so you know where to avoid it and that sort of thing. So just planning your route, maybe trying it out is a super helpful thing. Another thing to get ready is checking the weather and getting your gear out the night before. So winter biking takes a little extra gear, and it's super easy to just forget a part of your fit if you're rushing out the door to head to work. So I really recommend getting all your gear ready the evening before so you can grab it, put it on, go. For me, like I am super bad at remembering like eye protection. And so what I've ended up doing is just putting an extra pair of glasses, like sunglasses, in my bag and just keeping them there so I always have something, because I forget all the time, and it's super easy to do something like that. And speaking of glasses, eye protection is super important in the winter. So making sure you have that to keep the snow and wind out of your eyes. The case this morning, it was freezing rain, and so having ice flying in your face and your eyes is really not good. So try to have that eyewear. Make sure it's clear so that you can wear it during the nights as well. We know it's the winter, it gets dark early, so make sure your eyewear is clear or really light too. Next slide, Peggy, anything to add?
Ellie, I just wanted to add something, and this is not a vanity thing, but for those of you who wear mascara, I mean, really, you can come in on a day like today looking like you just, are part raccoon. So in the winter, if you do wear mascara, think about either goggles or waterproof mascara. Again, it is one of those things I have come in to do webinars and realize like, holy moly. Yeah, another important piece.
It's a good one. Okay. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the different skills when it comes to biking in the winter and in wintry conditions. So one of the most important things is definitely your lane position in terms of your safety and your visibility to others. So if there's snow in the shoulder, the bike lane, whatever, take the lane. A lot of times bike lanes and shoulders can be blocked by snow and be unplowed. And in Vermont, like you are legally allowed to be in the travel lane when the bike lane or the shoulder is obstructed. It is your right to be there. Use that right. It's the safest place to be in that kind of circumstance. And the road is usually better plowed, so you're not having to deal with the snow and slush and ice as much. And frankly, it's where you are most visible to oncoming traffic and traffic behind you. Even if you're kind of, understandably worried that you're slowing down the traffic behind you, you have a right to be there when there's nowhere else for you to be. And so, yeah, it's super important to take the lane. And if you are biking in a lane or a shoulder that is, plowed, but maybe not perfectly plowed, make sure you're scanning ahead and watching for any upcoming obstacles such as unplowed sections, ice patches, road debris, potholes, all of that stuff. This way you have time to kind of like signal and move over. Something I do is I won't put my arm all the way out, but I'll kind of like point at the hazard and to indicate to the car driver behind me that I'm kind of moving, but just for a second. So just give me a second to get around this, and then you can go around me when I'm back in the bike lane or in the shoulder or something like that. And the nice thing about being on a bike is you're traveling usually like maybe around 10 miles an hour, maybe a little faster if you're on an e-bike, less fast in the snow. And so you have time to kind of spot those obstacles and react to them accordingly. It's the really nice thing about being on a bike, right? When you're traveling at that speed. Okay, perfect, nailed it. Thanks, Peggy. So in addition to positioning yourself to be visible, it's also important to have the gear that keeps you visible to other roadway users. So at a minimum, that's needing a red flashing light in the back on your bike and a bright white light in the front. And that's the law in Vermont. In Vermont, technically you just need a rear reflector, but in the city of Burlington proper, it's a rear light and a front light. So it's the law. It keeps you way safer. Make sure you have it. And you can use your lights day and night in the wintertime. It doesn't hurt, and it's really helpful when it's precipitating as well. And something I always think about with winter biking and my lights is that since it's cold, your bike lights are powered by batteries most often, and you're using them for longer because there are more dark hours of the day, the batteries might die pretty quickly. Most of lights are rechargeable, so I recommend maybe keeping an extra charging cord in your bag or in your office so you can charge your lights during the day while you're at work, after your ride to work, and that way they're ready to go on your way home. If you have an e-bike with integrated lights, then you don't really have to worry about that. But then, yeah, so that's kind of enough on lights. Bright and reflective clothing is also super helpful. So wear that if you have it. And the last thing I'll add is if you're carrying a backpack or a pannier, some bike specific ones do have like reflectors on them. There are tons of different stickers you can kind of pop on any bags you might have that also really increase your visibility. Peggy, anything to add on this one?
I would say, it's not ideal, but I have a bunch of like these little Catma like pushy blink lights in case of an emergency. So you're kind of go. I wear a backpack, and in there or in my pannier are like it's like a Mary Poppins. I've got a rag to dry off a seat if I need that. I've got an extra little blinky light just in case. So think about those little things. I mean, you don't want to weigh yourself down with a whole bunch of extra stuff, but a little blinky light is often helpful.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right. So prepping your bike for winter biking. You don't need a fancy bike with studded tires or fat tires or anything to bike during the winter. So long as the path that you're biking on is somewhat plowed, your regular bike is going to do just fine in that. I think there's this misconception around what bikes can handle, but they're like super sturdy machines, and you will be surprised at how much they can handle. So, just be cognizant of the weather conditions and know that they are rough on your bike, but your bike can still handle it in terms of getting through it. And we'll talk more about kind of winter bike maintenance a little later in the webinar. But one really easy way to help your bike handle better in the snow and in the winter is to lower your tire pressure. So identifying that PSI range on the sides of your tire and just lowering it to the lower part of that range. As long as you're within the range that's on the tire, you're good. Tires that are slightly less inflated give you better traction on the road because they cover more surface area and give you more grip. So think about like kind of a tire flattening because it has a little more give, it's a little squishier. You just don't want your tires to be hard as a rock when you're biking in the winter. Last time we taught this webinar, I recall Peggy saying the consistency of your tire should feel kind of like a firm orange, right? Where it's firm, but you can press on it just a little bit and it's a tiny bit squishy. So kind of another rule of thumb is like if you press your thumb on your tire and it like on the top of the tire, not on the sides, but the top, and it presses in more than a few centimeters, that's probably a little too flat, but just, like firm, but with a little bit of give when you press your thumb on it. Just as a heads up, when you do lower your tire pressure, this means you're going to feel more resistance. You're getting more grip, but that means your ride might be a little harder or might take you a little longer. So just be aware you're going to be, getting a little more exercise when you lower your tire pressure because there's that rolling resistance. And it's good to kind of do this test out at home so you can lower your pressure and your bike setup, test it out at home and make adjustments before heading out on an actual commute or anything like that. Anything to add, Peggy?
Yeah, Eliana mentioned, you don't need studded tires. You don't necessarily want to go out with slicks. You don't want to go out with a bike with no tread or traction. So if you see in this photo, their mountain bike tire, chunky tires, go with something like that. And then if you want to go for studs, which are a little more expensive, then go that route.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Okay. Overcoming obstacles. This is perhaps the most important skill, or I don't know, you can kind of get with winter biking. It's not all or nothing. We talked about earlier about, scanning ahead for obstacles while you're biking during the winter. If you see something that gives you the creeps, whether it's like a snow pile or maybe it's just a little bit of slush on the ground and you're like, I'm not sure what's underneath that, just stop, get off your bike and walk around it. I had to do that on my commute this morning. I ride through Battery Park to get to work, and the city always plows the path such that it drops off the curb instead of going kind of to the sidewalk and to the crosswalk. And so I was like, my bike could handle getting off that curb, especially with the snow, but I'm not going to risk it. I don't want to get a flat. Like, I don't want to fall. So I just got off, walked around it, and hopped back on. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. It's definitely worthwhile. Especially if you're newer to winter biking, be generous with yourself and like trying to get off and walk around stuff. It takes time to learn what you and what your bike can handle in terms of snow, ice, and slush. Like I said, bikes can handle a lot, but it takes time and doing it in practice to understand specifically kind of what those situations are. The temperature is warm today, so most of the slush on the road I knew was going to be wet enough that I can roll through it, but it's not like that every time. So it's just stuff that you kind of learn as you do. And the best choice, like I said, it's better to just get off and walk your bike over sketchy situations. Anything else, Peggy?
There's a question in the chat right now. What do you do if you hit ice?
We're getting to that.
we're going to get into that. Marlena, just hold that question. We're going to get to it in the next slide.
Yeah. So first of all, with ice, just knowing where they more commonly pop up is a good thing to know. So be aware that icy patches are most common in shadowed areas. So think of places on your bike route that don't get a lot of sunlight because of the buildings or maybe the trees around them. So just be super cognizant of that. And then when you're making turns or going around corners, take them slow and take them wide. You don't want to be, normally when you're riding a bike and it's normal dry conditions, you're good to kind of like lean into your turns and take them with a little more speed, right? But when it's icy or slick, you don't want to be leaning, right? So that's kind of the first rule I would say with that. We have another slide on this, Peggy, but do you want to add anything in terms of like the awareness of where ice pops up or anything?
I know. I was just going to jump the gun. Yeah, I would say those curbs, and then on like 2 days ago when there was we had a little thaw and then a freeze and then a layer of snow. So there was just like a layer of ice. It's just being aware of those kinds of conditions to, again, today, things are pretty warm and slushy. It's going to be easier to go through. But if there was a freeze and then a layer of snow on top, that's when I would really be much more cautious on some of my kind of typical routes. Wide, slow turns are key. But more on ice.
So if you do start to skid on ice, don't overcorrect it. Kind of gently steer in the direction you're skidding, kind of like you would in a car. Don't make any jerky, large steering corrections, and don't slam on your brakes. Tap the brakes just gently and make sure you're using your right brake, your rear brake, more than your front brake. And this is important because your rear wheel is where your power and your speed comes from, whereas your front is just the steering. And so slamming on your front brake could cause a jolt, and you don't want to go over the bars and that sort of thing. And Peggy, I'm sure you have more to say about this one.
Yes, I'm also trying to type to say this as well. I think one thing that I took a scrubber, we all have, in the ice in front of a bunch of UVM students. And it's this one spot as I go on Prospect Street to get onto campus, where it's chunky and there's ice and there's divots and so forth. And I was going way too fast. So first of all, go slow. And then after that, when I'm turning, I have I don't use clips ever at all because of lots of, horrendous accidents. But certainly not in winter. I'm always ready to put my inside foot. So like when you're kind of turning like this, that inside foot is ready to go on the ground so that the fall is less, like I can brace myself for the fall. And that it's happened where like then the bike falls and I'm able to kind of come up without any broken pieces of my body. So go slow, and even on a wide turn, get ready to put your foot down.
Yeah. And I think one other thing I'll mention on this, that is not something I actually do, but something that Peggy, you've mentioned a bunch of times, is some folks might want to lower their seats a little bit in the winter so that you can more easily get your foot down, even though the riding position might be a little less comfy than you're used to. Just having that ease of mind, knowing like I can put my foot down super easily, like I'm not reaching with my toes like I normally would. So that's another kind of like little adjustment that you can make. And might make it easier if you do end up hitting an ice patch to like get your foot down and get your balance. So Peggy, you have more experience with that sort of setup than I do. But I thought it was
Yes,
definitely
because I'm like over 25 years older than you. And I think so. When I first started, I had my seat lower, um, and but I had a crossbar on my bike. Since then, that bike like rusted out to death. I now have a step through, and my seats kind of at pretty much regular height. So again, if we think about these sort of evolutionary pieces in our kind of skill and comfort level in biking, there are a lot of micro adjustments that you can make on a bike. Your seat, lowering your post, moving your saddle, your bike seat kind of up and back, depending on how over your pedals you want to be, shortening your stem. So lots of micro adjustments to make you feel a little bit more upright, instead of kind of hunched over. So you're able to kind of see a little bit more clearly ahead, whatever your comfort level is. And then adjust as you go along and feel more comfortable.
Yeah, true. Okay, so that was a lot of information. I want to take the opportunity to stop and let people ask any questions you might have around kind of the skills before we get into gear and all that kind of stuff. Let's see. One attendee said, suggestions for those who wear glasses on the day to help prevent fogging, snow, rain obstructing vision. Are goggles over the glasses recommended? I don't wear glasses, so I can't speak super well to this, but I think that the goggles over the glasses would probably work pretty well. I've just recently started wearing clear goggles while I ride during the winter. And they don't fog up because they have that like little foam layer between your face and all of that. And they've been working super well. It was a good $20 investment, so not too much. I don't know, Peggy, do you have any experience with that?
Yeah, so I did respond to that.
Okay.
Yeah, you can wear them over your glasses. You want to wear your glasses, go to a ski shop. You don't need to get like super high-end goggles, but what you do want is enough peripheral vision, kind of clear kind of glass space, and that they're going to fit over your frames. But I don't wear my glasses that much, my head, the top. But my husband does, and he has been winter riding forever. And so when it's any sort of precipitation, he has his goggles on so he doesn't have his glasses fogging up and so forth. So it is finding the one that's going to fit over your frames, where it gives you enough peripheral vision. And then, as Eliana mentioned early, do a trial run close to home to figure out, like, is this really going to work, before you kind of commit to a bike commute and realize, like, oh my God, I can't see, or I can only see like this. Any other questions?
I just didn't know if we wanted to address e-bikes at all, and sort of something that comes to mind for me is the battery of the e-bikes. If it's left out in the cold, it could degrade the battery and also make the battery not be able to fully charge. So a consideration I take in winter bike riding is to always bring in the battery and charge it inside, and then bring it out when you're ready to ride. But I didn't know if you all had any other e-bike considerations for winter riding.
That's a really good point. And I would say, if you have a long commute, consider, making sure that you're able to even charge your battery, so that you're going home with full juice. And I think, probably with the winter bike maintenance, comments that we're going to have a little bit later, really being extra vigilant about, making sure the case where your battery is kept is as corrosive free as possible. Many of those lock, and you don't want that lock to goop up. You can also put, I can't even think of the term. It's like some kind of goopy grease. Eliana, help me. Where's Luis? Where's Nick? That you can put on the lock, so that it lubricates, but it also will protect the
WD-40?
what?
WD-40?
No, it's like a grease. I'm gonna try to get that answer in the next. I'm gonna text my husband. It's some grease that you can put on so that it will actually kind of create a little bit of a seal against some of the salt.
Yeah, those are also good tips on the e-bike batteries. Another one that you want to be aware of when riding is, you're riding out in the cold, so you don't want to charge your battery when it's cold. So if you're getting home and I'm going to charge my battery, make sure you bring it inside and let the battery sit inside at room temp for about like 10 to 15 minutes before you charge it up, just to allow it to get warmer, so that you're not damaging it by trying to charge that battery when it's cold. Another good tip is that if you do have an e-bike that you're riding in the winter, just being aware that the cold does deplete the battery a little bit faster. So like I have an e-bike, so I'm paying more attention to my battery as I'm riding, and I'm bringing my charger like with me to work, just to make sure that it is always charged and I don't have to ride a 65-pound bike home without the battery going.
Cool. Any other questions at this point in time before we move on? All right. Peggy, do you want to take this, or should I jump in?
Sure, I'm happy to take on the mindset. And then jump in, Eliana. So, as I mentioned early on, it's that the mindset of just get out there. The first couple times can be intimidating, thinking about gear, thinking about ice, thinking about, basically we've told you, like, wow, here are all these things that could possibly go wrong on your bike ride. But we're here to tell you it's the mindset that can get you through all that. It's a little bit of expectation management, right? So think of every ride as a shakedown ride. So you are like, you're kind of warming up. There's stuff that's going to happen. Don't feel bad about it. Don't panic. Just be prepared. So not that you're going to go around. I don't want to say like, oh, go around like nervous Nelly expecting you're going to fall. I fell when I was overly confident the first time. So that's also a problem. But taking some of these cautious, or precautions, and then having a plan B. Again, we're not saying you should ride your bike every single day on every crappy winter day. No, but getting out on a cold bike ride and your core is warm and then your hands start feeling hot and the wind is in your face and it's just like, and then you hear like the fire trucks go by and so forth and it ruins your jam. But it really is so invigorating, and what a great way to kind of start the day and like shift gears as you're heading home, and then have a plan B. So we'll talk more about, oh, it's right there as well. Carry your cell phone, and we should also say carry your cell phone charged. Have a friend or colleague or family member, be a backup and give you a ride if necessary. Know that you can, depending on where you work, find out if there's a place that you can leave your bike safely stored indoors if you need to just like do your plan B and get a ride home. Green Cab, which is now Vermont Ride Network, I think is the company that supports the guaranteed ride home program through CATMA. So if you're at UVM, the medical center, Champlain, any of the CATMA members, you can use your guaranteed ride home, and you just call, you have a number, and you get your free ride home.
Right.
And then you can also use public transit. You can put your bike on the bus, or again, leave your bike in the office or in a safe place in your workplace, lock it up and get on the bus and go home. So sometimes there are days where it looks like you can, make it home without hitting the storm, and it doesn't turn out that way. And if you live too far to walk your bike, then use one of those options. It will make you want to do it again instead of feel really discouraging. Anything else, Eliana?
No, I think you covered all my notes that I had. So.
Okay. And then Marlena from CATMA is reminding us that in the guaranteed ride home, they will also reimburse Uber and Lyft. So really you have no reason to, impale yourself on the cross and try to get home when it's just not safe, or when you're not feeling safe.
Yep.
And dress for the occasion, right? So what are all the pieces that we need to keep warm and keep cozy and so forth? They're going to vary. There are going to be, again, some of these micro adjustments, but as I mentioned, your core gets hot, way hotter than you think. And if you are biking uphill, you're going to be actually sweating, and you're going to want to bring a clean shirt to change into when you get into work. Keep your extremities warm for right now, my hands are cold. I'm not in an office. So if your hands are always cold, make sure you get the kinds of gloves, and multiple gloves, if you need them, that are going to keep your hands warm. Layers are really key. Waterproof as much as possible in the winter. I have a pair of rain pants that I prefer riding in. I tried riding, said this last year, I tried riding in snow pants, and like I bent over to lock my bike, and I thought I was going to pass out. They're just too tight. Or they didn't provide the give where I needed the give. So find something comfortable, like a nice, like pull on elastic waistband that you can actually move in without passing out. Frostbite, because your core is hot, you want to make sure, like on a really cold day, that your fingertips are warm enough, your nose, really it's mostly your face that's going to be exposed. Eliana already mentioned the ski goggles and the sunglasses. Balaclava is helpful. Hat versus headband. Some of these things are personal. I usually use like a winter riding skull cap. So that means that when I'm on campus where I work, I have a hat either in my backpack, I have one in my backpack, and I have one at my desk, because then I've gone to meetings across campus where I'm walking and I just have this like dorky skull cap. So it's just making sure like, okay, I have like a proper hat for when I'm walking across to meetings. So all those little pieces, are key, and we can fine tune them.
Can I put
Yeah, I was going to say,
I was just gonna a fine note on the waterproofing as much as you possibly can, especially if you're not planning to put fenders on your bike. So we're talking water, like rain pants, a waterproof jacket, and your shoes. Because if you don't have fenders on your bike, your tires are gonna pick up that snow and water and stuff that's on the road, and it's just gonna spray you, right? So having stuff that is waterproof is super important for keeping your clothing underneath both dry and clean. So just like putting a fine point on that. But if you have fenders, you can get super cheap ones. They make a huge difference for that. So yeah, I just wanted to put a finer point on the waterproofing stuff, because I feel that it's super important.
Yeah, I think even like right now, I don't know what it's doing out there. It doesn't really look like it's snowing. So if I were to head out right now, I would think, oh, I don't really need my rain pants, but actually, I've got fenders, which I totally recommend. But you get so much kicked up that your trousers get all just the bottom part of your pant legs get all kind of gunky. So just be aware of that. And then I can almost taste like the salt and the like grit from the road in my mouth without a fender.
Yeah.
So Eliana, just join me here on this list, like, the necessary, the gloves, the mittens, the glasses, the sunglasses. So I got these pair of like, I don't know, like they were like triathlon sunglasses. And so they have 3 different shades that you can take out. Like one's clear, one's, for like fishing, and one's for like really sunny days. Something like that is great for most of the time. And then when it's really, really cold and you want as much covered, that's when I put personally my goggles on. Everyone's going to be a little different, and your ride is going to be different. Your ride may dictate kind of what you need if you're out for a long time. One thing that I hate getting cold, but always gets cold, is the space between like my helmet and hat and the top of my goggles. So it's like this little strip here. So it's like figuring out, like, do I wear the balaclava and tuck it in? Whatever your issue is, address it. Otherwise you'll be miserable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the necessary list is pretty comprehensive. And for me, if I could recommend one piece from the recommended / optional list, it would be the fenders. And that's, personal to me, but you can get them pretty, like I said, for relatively cheap. You can get like plastic ones. You can probably even like makeshift your own kind of fender, if you want to do something like quick and dirty, that sort of thing. And with bar mitts, those are, if you do decide like your hands get super cold and that's something you want to try out, just be aware how they, you might need like just a thin pair of gloves underneath them, or some people prefer no gloves at all. And just being aware of how they might like change your turning ability and like your feeling when you're turning, just because they kind of restrict your arm up to a little below your elbow and that sort of thing. So, again, those sort of little adjustments with stuff, but, stick with just the necessary stuff to start with. And as you practice your winter biking, you might decide, my hands, they stay cold and I can't find a glove that keeps them warm. I'm going to get some bar mitts. So yeah, just those adjustments. You might want an extra light on your helmet for visibility, and always keeping, if you're hardcore, a pump, spare tube, tire levers, and a patch kit for, flats that may happen out there. But yeah, that's getting up into the optional stuff.
Yeah, I would say that optional piece, that pump I'd like keep a pump on you, or no. There are maps that indicate local motion. I'm pretty sure you have them. I know that we had them at UVM as well, where there are bike fix-it stations, so you know where you can kind of pump your tire. If it's cold and you've got to change your tire, be ready to know how to do it. Otherwise, you're going to get really frustrated. And that's one of those times where you find a secure place to leave your bike locked up and you get someone to get you.
Yeah. And I just want to flag a question that Abby asked. I don't know that the whole audience saw it. So Abby asked something about a ski helmet versus a thin winter hat with a bike helmet. Is one better than the other? I think, and Peggy responded, it's preference. And I totally agree. I wear my regular bike helmet with a thin hat, and that works for me. You know, I have a full head of hair. The helmet is another layer, and then a thin hat. Mostly for me, it's just actually covering my ears. So on a day like today, I'm just going out with an earband to keep my ears covered. My head usually stays warm, but others like wear their ski helmets because they're warmer, like my boss does. You know, it's just up to you. If your head gets cold, maybe you need to wear your ski helmet, but if it doesn't, then yeah, personal preference for sure. Okay, anything else on gear?
So I did hear back. Phil's Grease is, I guess that's the brand name. It comes in like a weird green tube. That's what my personal bike mechanic puts on moving parts in the winter. So Phil's Grease to kind of keep a lubricant protective layer against the salt. Anyway,
Hey,
as we get into keeping Steed stellar.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a super good segue into this slide, actually, because we're going to talk a little bit about chain lube, or at least I was. So the salt, dirt, and sludge that kicks up onto your bike accumulates and causes corrosion and damage if it sits on your bike for too long. So if you think about like the dirt from a road, like in your chain links, and then that chain going over a bunch of gears a bunch of time, and that grinding, like that's what's happening to your bike, and it happens like super frequently in the winter. And so that's why it's incredibly important to keep your bike clean, and clean it after almost every ride if you can. Wiping it down and getting that stuff off is the most important thing. And so, and also keeping your chain lubed and dry after rides, using a rag or an old t-shirt to kind of wipe down that chain. And during the winter, make sure you're using wet chain lube as opposed to dry chain lube. So wet lube kind of repels water, and it helps prevent that rust, but it's stickier, which means it causes grease buildup easier. So your chain is going to turn black as opposed to brown from the rust, if you can think about it that way. So only use wet lube in the winter. In the summer and in the warmer, dry months, you can use dry lube because it doesn't pick up and have all that stuff stick, but it still keeps your chain moving nicely. Another thing is just hosing it down if you can, and that's pretty easy. Your bike can handle the water. It's way better to have water on it than it is to have all that like salt and dirt and stuff in there. A tip, and this is a really good one, is a little bit of warm water in a squirt bottle and just spraying it into the gears and your bottom bracket, which is shown on this slide. That's where a lot of buildup happens, and it's easy to miss because it's the bottom side of your bike. And it's definitely worth a tune-up in the spring if you've ridden all winter to keep all those parts spinning nicely. Anything else to add on this one?
Nope. No.
Cool. Some people have bikes that they use specifically for winter riding. And if you have, you know, a nice bike that you ride in the spring or the summer that you don't want it to be ruined by the winter, you might consider buying an inexpensive bike for winter use. You can find relatively cheap bikes on Craigslist or bike swaps, and you know, we have a lot of local shops here. They'll sell used bikes or their old demo bikes that that can make great winter bikes that you might not mind getting a little bit rusty. But again, if you do take this route, regular cleaning is still recommended so that the bike stays functional for your needs, right? So yeah, I think that's all I would say about that.
Yeah, I think whatever you have, keep it keep it clean, as frequently as possible. Even as we mentioned, like it was in the previous slide, just if you don't have a hose that's accessible, just like warm water in a squirt bottle, or a water bottle, and hosing it off, and a rag over your chain are really like the bare minimum that you should always be doing.
Yeah. Okay, I think this is our last slide, a note to keep you motivated. Just a couple things you can do to practice keeping you wanting to go out, keeping a record of your rides, including like the lowest temperature you've ever ridden in, or like the most amount of snowfall you've ridden in. I will say, like this winter, I've ridden through more snow like storms than I ever have, so that's been fun, I guess. You can promote your biking on social media and inspire your friends and your colleagues. Speaking of your colleagues, doing a bike pool and riding together is a fun way to keep yourself motivated. And then recognizing that your commute is an adventure. It feels like pretty epic to be on a bike through a winter wonderland. Like when I was riding through Battery Park this morning, I just was looking at all the trees and the fresh snow, and it was like, this is just really, really fun and cool. And not everyone gets to do it, like that overwhelming gratitude. So yeah, I don't know, anything else to leave our audience with, Peggy?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm just like a middle-aged mom, and when people are like, oh, you winter bike, oh, you're so hardcore, I'm not hardcore anything. But there's this image that you ride your bike in the winter and you're this badass. So embrace it. Like, wow, we are doing something, like we are breathing this air and we are out in fresh air, doing something that's like a little fun and a little exciting on our commute. So I say go for it. If someone calls you, hardcore, then wear that as a badge of honor. But again, don't beat yourself up, and you don't have to ride every day.
Yeah.
And then I see a question. We have a couple of events that I know Jessica wants to get to. So any updates on the status of infrastructure improvements for bike commuters, better sheltered racks at park and rides, increased bike capacity on GMT buses. Is Mary Catherine's typing a response to that. So I'll let her take care of that to Ernie. And then I'm wondering if Marlena, could you put the guaranteed ride home contact information in the chat? Janet, or if you're like a CATMA, if your organization is a CATMA member, she'll get that to you. So I think that's it for Eliana and me on our little presentation. And then Jessica's going to talk about a follow-up from this.
Okay, thank you, Peggy. Yeah, so we have a couple of upcoming events about winter riding that I think are really exciting. So on February 1st, which is next Wednesday, we're actually doing like an in-person winter riding demo practice, like a lot of these skills that we've talked about today. So that'll be February 1st from 12 to 1 in the UVM Alumni House, a parking lot. So join us there. We will have some bikes there that you can test out. Some of them will have studded tires, some will not. We'll also have some gear that you can kind of like test out and see how it works, like the bar mitts that Eliana was mentioning. If you would like to bring your own bike, feel free to do that as well. Winter Bike to Work Day is on February 10th, and there are a couple of events there. So in the morning between 8 and 9, you can join your fellow bikers at UVM's booth house, which is on South William Street, for coffee, snacks, swag bags, and some socializing on your way to work or class. So that should be really fun. And then in the evening on February 10th, Local Motion is doing a group ride where you can, practice your night riding skills in winter, because night riding is it's a really big reality of riding during the winter since it gets dark so early. So that will be starting at 6 p.m. at the top of Church Street and Pearl Street. The ride will go around downtown Burlington, going through some of like the infrastructure things, and the ride leader will point out different things to the riders. You'll end the ride at the Local Motion office down at the waterfront, where hot chocolate will be provided, and you'll have a chance to like socialize and talk to everyone else you rode with about the ride and any other bikey things that come up. Oh, and then so those are the things that are coming up. And then everyone who attended today will also have the chance to be entered into a drawing to win a $75 gift certificate from Outdoor Gear Exchange. So to be able to do that, I will be sending out an email to everyone who attended today in the next couple of days. And that email will be a feedback form. And then once you've completed that feedback form, that's how you will be entered into that drawing. All right, and that is all I have. Let's see, did any other questions come up? All right, so it looks like the info for the guaranteed ride home is in the question and answer section. So thank you, Marlena, for providing that.
Jessica, can I just add one thing? I really encourage folks, if you're interested in trying out some winter biking, to join us next week. I would say if you don't have, it's going to be demo. You can ride a little bit. You don't have to have foul weather gear necessarily, so don't worry about that. We'll have some stuff that you can try on. I would say that if you're going to try riding a winter bike and it's like this outside, you might not want to wear your best trousers. So like a pair of jeans or something that, if it gets a little wet, you're not going to, it's not going to be a problem. But join us. It's going to be fun. And I'm glad we finally have snow to demo this.
Yeah, I'm excited about that too. All right. I don't see any other questions, so I think we'll end the webinar here, and happy winter riding, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Thanks all.
Woo, that was fun.